What's up, YouTube? This is Big Mike. All right, really didn't have time to upload a video last night. I was disgusted at what I was looking at, and although sometimes I think some of my better videos is when I'm actually speaking from raw emotion after looking at some of these travesty of games. But as we all know, the Golden State Warriors won Game 7, besting the Houston Rockets. I even forget what the hell the goddamn final score was, but it was not a particularly close game in the second half. The Rockets finally tried to make a push the final minutes, but I kind of, I kind of thought what would happen happened last night. The Rockets started off well. I think they hit their first 6 out of 14 shots from three-point range. They looked good. I'm not going to lie, I was rooting for Houston to win. I don't particularly like Golden State as a team, all right? I'm not going to sit here and try like when it comes to sports, sometimes I'm this unbiased observer. I have my biases just like all of you guys who are listening to this particular video. But Houston had like an 8 to 10 point lead at halftime. I think it was a 10-point lead. But knowing the Warriors, I felt like that wasn't enough. I think the Rockets should have ended the first half with at least something approaching a 20-point lead, because I knew that the Warriors were going to make a push in the third quarter, which is a signature of this team. A lot of championship teams on the road tend to do that. I remember the Lakers would often do that. The Bulls would do that. The Lakers, Showtime Lakers in the 80s, whenever they were down in the half, they would make a push in the third quarter. And sure enough, that's what happened. And I'm not going to lie. If you're a Rocket fan, if you're a Warrior hater, I understand if you feel as though the officiating was iffy in this particular game. Because let's be honest, a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this point, but I am firmly of the opinion that the NBA is a business. And a business, what's the objective? To maximize your profits. And the NBA knows that a more lucrative final is one where LeBron James and the Golden State Warriors are a part of, rather than a one featuring James Harden and the Boston Celtics. All right. So with that in mind, you have to realize that officials are very aware of who the stars and who aren't the stars in these series. Did James Harden get fouled 3 different times while attempting to shoot a three-pointer? One of them should have been a continuation and a free throw, potential 4-point play. Yes, this is a guy, James Harden, who they say is the best in the league at drawing fouls. Yet, for some reason, during those situations, the officials didn't apparently see fouls. The officials were favorable to Golden State in a lot of situations, right? When you would think that the home team, which has always been the notion when I was growing up, the home team always got the beneficial calls. But unless you're the Golden State Warriors, I guess that still applies, but not the Golden State. But having said all of that, right? The Houston Rockets deserved to lose last night, all right? I can't really blame all this on officiating. True, maybe if you call some of those calls, for Harden and other things, maybe the Rockets would have eked it out. But the Rockets did everything possible to lose the fucking game last night, all right? I have never, in my 28 years of watching professional basketball, ever since I was 10 years old, all right, 9 years old actually, ever since I was 9 years old when I first started watching the NBA playoffs, right? That's when I started really regularly watching basketball. In the 28 years, I have never seen a fucking team miss, 27 consecutive three-point attempts. If that's not choking, and a lot of these threes, they had all the time in the world to make sure that their fundamentals in shot release, shot form, foot aligned, everything was perfect. Trevor Ariza, James Harden, Eric Gordon, these guys choked. And when I saw it, it was unbelievable. They choked. All right? They choked. And there's nothing else that a Rocket fan can say that justifies it. And then there's another thing I'm noticing from reading some of the comments today from a lot of James Harden fanboys, right? Because a lot of these James Harden fanboys, and don't get that misconstrued, okay? You can be a fan of James Harden and not be a fanboy. The difference between a fan and a fanboy, in my opinion, is a fan still looks at these things with a logical eye. A fanboy is passionate, overly passionate for James Harden, and will not listen to reason. And they almost act as if though, it's sort of like almost like if you have a child and everyone else can see that this child is Ted Bundy, but you don't see Ted Bundy or John Wayne Gacy or, Eric and Lyle Menendez. If you're a parent, you wouldn't actually be seeing them. You'd be dead somewhere. But, you don't see the evil, the Jeffrey Dahmer in them. You see what you want to see, which is a facade. You still see that little boy, that little child in your arms. The little boy, the little innocent boy, not this sadistic monster. Now, I just use that comparison because you didn't see James Harden choking it up last night. You still see that James Harden scored 60 points against a mediocre team during the regular season. You see the James Harden who, has had consistently good performances. You see the highlight reels of James Harden looking, spectacular against good teams, sometimes great teams, but you didn't see what happened last night. That's the difference. But I digress a little bit. A lot of these James Harden fanboys and Westbrook haters, right? They love to bring up how Westbrook chokes all the time. Westbrook is this big choker. He's this choke artist, even though if you actually look at Russell Westbrook play, sometimes his teams do lose a lot in big pivotal games, right? But Russell Westbrook oftentimes shows up. Is he a volume scorer? Yes. As was Allen Iverson, okay? As was Kobe Bryant to a lesser extent. But they went down shooting. James Harden really, I can't say went down shooting. He did shoot a lot of shots, but they were, how can I say this, like, he scored 32 points, I think, right? But he took 29 shots, and his shots really didn't look impactful, okay? He did not seem to put his imprint on his game even though he lost. Okay, he didn't go down on his shield, so to speak. Russell Westbrook went down on his shield. Russell Westbrook would have took 60 shots if needed be, all right? But he would have went down on his shield. He has that warrior mentality. James Harden sometimes, well, actually a lot of times, lacks that warrior mentality. That's why people like me, 78 Sports News, all right? A lot of those old school basketball fans, we gravitate toward the James Hardens. We gravitate to the Kobe Bryant mentality. I didn't like Kobe. I'll admit it now. I didn't like Kobe because I hated the Jordan comparisons. But now that he's retired, I've grown to appreciate Kobe Bryant. I don't see that with James Harden. All right? This is the second year in a row that he's choked out in the playoffs. And also, stop trying to, James Harden fanboys, all right? Stop trying to shift the blame from James Harden, who was the MVP, all right? The guy with the most lucrative contract in NBA history, the presumptive MVP, the leader of this team. Stop trying to shift the blame to a role player in Trevor Ariza. Oh, Trevor Ariza went over 12. Trevor Ariza, he went over 9 from three-point range. Well, you know what? Harrison Barnes picked the wrong time 2 years ago to have the worst game of his career in Game 7 of the NBA Finals against Cleveland, right? Pick one of the worst times to have, if not the worst, one of the worst games of his career. But Harrison Barnes isn't to blame. If anybody was to blame for losing that finals, it was Stephen Curry. Because Stephen Curry had a lot of uncharacteristic turnovers and he did not bring his A game. All right? As far as shooting the basketball and his passing and decision making out there. The leader of the team accepts the losses. They take the blame. Because if you could take the glory, if you could take all the praise and adulation when you're winning, then my friends, you have to also be able to take the blame and the criticism when you lose. So the Houston Rockets were eliminated. On paper, this was their most successful regular season team. But in the grand scheme of things, no one's going to remember this team years from now because they didn't win the championship. So 65 wins really becomes irrelevant. Now, moving on to the NBA Finals. It's the same match that we've had since 2015. I'm tired of it. I know a lot of you are all tired of it, unless you're a casual fan or you're a fan of LeBron James or the Cleveland Cavaliers or a fan of Stephen Curry / Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, or the Golden State Warriors. We're tired of this matchup. Barring some type of apocalyptic event which would alter reality, I don't see Cleveland winning this series. I do have a sneaking suspicion that the officials will try to help Cleveland out in this series because they don't want to see they know that if this is like it's going to be the David versus Goliath, narrative during the series. But if this becomes like an embarrassing blowout type, 4-game sweep, like just blowout, like Reagan versus Mondale 84 type event, political reference. Hope some of you got it. Maybe some of you younger guys don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Who the fuck is Mondale? If it becomes something like that, then I can see the officials trying to help out Cleveland a little bit, especially in their home games. Something like, getting, I wouldn't be surprised if in some of these games in Cleveland, you might see guys like Stephen Curry. You heard it here first. You might see guys like a Stephen Curry or Klay Thompson or Draymond Green getting foul trouble, trying to help Cleveland out as much as possible. I also see LeBron James possibly breaking Michael Jordan's finals record for points per game. Of course, he came close to that 2015 when he didn't have Kyrie Irving or Kevin Love. This time, he doesn't, again, also have Kyrie Irving. I don't know if Kevin Love's going to play in game one. I guess he will be back by then. But I can see LeBron James shooting a lot in this series. I mean, minimum 25 shots per game in this series. And with his field goal percentage, that could equate to a 40 points per game average. And they're going to need every point, And if even with that, that still might not be enough. It might not be enough. Golden State is just too powerful a team. Offensively, they rank up there with the greatest offensive teams we've ever seen. You know what I mean? Like, when I think of the greatest offensive teams in history, I think of the Showtime Lakers. I think of when they were hitting on all cylinders, the Shaq Kobe teams, early 2000s. I think of the Celtics dynasty when they were at their peak in the mid 60s. I even think of those old Denver Nugget teams in the 80s. Offensively, they still hold the record for highest points per game average during the regular season. I think it was the 81-82 season. They averaged 126.5 points per game. The only problem with those Doug Moe-led teams were that they played absolutely no fucking defense. So they scored 126.5 points, but probably gave up 125 points a game. So they lost their fair share of games. So I just don't see Golden State losing this series. At best, I see it going 4 games to 1. Could possibly be a sweep. If they get a lot of officiating help, it might go 6. Even though it really, in reality, shouldn't go more than 5. Tell me what you guys think.